Welcome to the Growth Factor, where we aim to spark new thinking by creating light bulb moments for accounting firm leaders on how to deliver transformational growth in your firm. I'm Chris Smith, Chief Growth Officer at QuickFee, and today I have the amazing Michael Haynes with me. Michael, thanks for joining us today. And before I jump in, Michael is the founder and principal consultant of Listen, Innovate, and Grow. But the real strategy and expertise behind what he does is all about go-to-market strategy and business growth. So, Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris. I'm really excited to be here and looking forward to this conversation.
Oh, man, this is going to be fun. Now, everything I've learned about you, Michael, leads me to believe that your first word when you were born was not mama, but it was growth. Is that true or false?
I don't know if that was my first word. It is definitely a driving factor about what I do today and what I enjoy doing, which is working with small and medium, B2B accounting firms, law firms, being two areas that I work with, helping those firms to really thrive and grow. Because there's great opportunities, in the whole B2B space, in the world of accounting, but you really have to understand the dynamics of what we're dealing with and the kinds of clients and how they think and how they buy, Chris, which is quite different from other areas, other types of B2B products and services.
Yeah. And you not only have a deep background in growth and consulting, but you also have the diversity of working globally. You have clients across the US, in Canada, in Australia. And so you've got a really good background of depth, but diversity too, in the different type of firms that you're working with.
Yes, Chris. So it's great having that international diversity because there are some differences, but there are a lot of similarities, Chris, in terms of the challenges that, accounting firms are facing, what they're trying to do, the kinds of clients that they're dealing with, and the mindset of the accounting clients are very similar in terms of where they are now.
Yeah. All right. So let's unpack some fun topics today. So for everybody listening, I want to say the key thing when I think about Michael, where he's going to have some light bulb moments, is around strategy, go-to-market strategy, and growth tied in. Now, you have to have strategy to have growth, but they're going to be hitting on certain things like that. And the first place that I'm going to start with you, Michael, on, again, we're going to try and trigger some light bulb moments. We want people to think differently and go, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I listened to Michael this morning. If you are an accounting firm and you're in a place today where you feel like the firm has just been doing what it's been doing for the past 10 years, 20 years, however long, and business isn't bad, right? So you've been doing these kind of, just getting the work done. Client service seems to be pretty good. And you're like, it's not bad. But then, you're not what I would say playing offense, you are not out there driving your strategy, making your imprint, capturing your clients the way that you want to. And you're like, I want to get in that game. Where do people start when they're looking to head down that journey?
Chris, fantastic question. And when you want to get started on that journey, you have to do the first thing, which is part of the name of my company, is to listen. You need to be doing some serious listening, which, Chris, that for me means getting an in-depth understanding. And you need to be listening on three levels. There's three kinds of listening that firm leaders, that the teams need to be doing. First one is listening to you. So really listening and reflecting on the firm. Where is the firm at currently? Where are you looking to go? What are the strengths of the firm? So what are the strengths in terms of its skills, its capabilities? Chris, where's the firm winning? So where are you getting, those big wins in terms of those big clients, the client renewals, the client referrals? Where are you winning awards and recognition? Is it with certain kinds of clients? Working on certain kinds of services? Is it in certain kinds of markets, combinations thereof? So really understand where you're at, where you're looking to go, what your strengths are, where you're winning. That's the first kind of listening, because that's going to start to help you, giving you some focus. That's listening first, number one. Second one, if you really want to get into the game, as you say, Chris, which is so important, we need to be listening to the market. And so by listening to the market, Chris, it's all about understanding for those key industries and geographic markets, both that you're currently serving and winning and having success with, but also those that you're perhaps looking over the fence and thinking, yeah, I wouldn't mind getting into fintech or building and construction, those other industries, getting an understanding of those as well. And so really understanding, when I say by listening to the market, understanding what are the trends, market performance, what are some of the broad client, prospect needs of those operating there, regulations, new developments. So really understanding the dynamic. Who are some of the key competitors in those industries and those markets, both you currently serve and seek to serve. So you really understand the market dynamics, how it's performing, where it's going. And then the third type of listening is listening to the customer, but we being in professional services and accounting, listening to our clients. This is a critical area, Chris. And this is an area where many firms, I find, miss it, or they either don't do it at all, or they don't do it they don't do enough of it and do it well. Because in terms of listening to the client, it's not about understanding at an organizational level. So, if you're an accounting firm and you're working, let's say, with construction companies, that you understand the company at an organizational level overall in terms of its structure and its goals and all of that. We need to understand listening to the buyer. So who's actually purchasing our accounting services? And in terms of the understanding the buyers, we need to understand three critical questions. Who makes the decision to buy, whether I'm going to go with firm X versus Y? What are the priorities of those decision makers? And the third one, Chris, how do they buy? How do they make that selection versus if we're going to go with accounting firm X versus accounting firm Y? What are those steps, so those activities? With whom do they talk to make those decisions? So listening on those three levels of listening to you, the firm, listening to the market to understand those industries and geographic markets you currently serve, seek to serve, and listening at that client level where we really understand the buyers of our services and those three critical questions of who buys, what are their priorities, and how they make those buying decisions. That is a first starting point in terms of getting in the game and getting on that growth journey. Because you'll get clarity as to where to really focus.
Yes. So I love it. Listening is, to me, taking that pause, that moment to stop, to reflect, and to do thinking. Listening is the genesis of being able to be a really good thinker.
Yeah.
And
well, Chris, I'm going to jump in there.
Yeah, please do.
It is about thinking. It is about pausing. But this is about doing active listening. It's really about doing some in-depth research and understanding. It is about actively going out there, in terms of listening to you, bringing your team together and having that, those strategy workshops, those sessions to discuss, understand, and let's get agreement as to our strengths, our wins, our goals, our priorities. I'm listening to you. Listening to the market is about going out and, reading those industry reports, tapping into your industry and professional association, going to those key events where you can be living in the market, interacting to understand market trends, reading those reports, listening on those webinars, attending those conferences. Listening at that client level, at that buyer level, is about having depth interviews, client workshops, decision maker panels, where you're interacting with those decision makers to understand their priorities, their requirements, their needs, their objections. So you really have that under. So this is about thinking, but it's also about active doing, getting out there and doing that active listening in a very active way.
And okay, so I love it. I love the way you use listening in multiple, context of the firm. Inside the firm, you have the market, you have clients. When you think about who does this, and so we have different size firms, right? We're going to have firms that are well-resourced. They have an executive team. They have functions, dedicated functions of business development and marketing and so on and so on. And then you're going to have other firms where you're going to have down at the partner level where they're wearing a lot of these hats, or the
Mhm.
shareholder level, the owner, they're going to be doing these. How do we make it not scary for them so they go, oh my gosh, I agree with everything you said, Michael. When I think about having to go and do that, I'm already busy enough. How do I actually find time to do that?
Okay, Chris, fantastic question. Well, first of all, a lot of the work I do working with small and medium accounting firms, they are at that other end of where the founders are, they're small, lean firms, very lean
Yeah.
resources. The partners are actively having to roll up their sleeves and get involved. So I very much work from that end. And this all can be done, Chris, in a very practical level, practical way. You need to make time, but this all can be done. So again, if we go back to the listening to you, it's about carving out some time, in the diary to say we're going to bring the team together and we're going to have, maybe one or two strategy sessions to bring together to discuss where we're at, where we're looking to go, planning out those meetings in advance to say what's the agenda, what are some things we
Mm-hmm.
want to look at in terms of, let's take a look at our client book of business and see who are our key clients. Let's look at some of those numbers to see where have been the strengths in terms of who is giving us those strong revenues, those profitable accounts, who's giving us those referrals. So scheduling those meetings, and they don't have to be very long, 60, 90 minutes, setting up the agenda and identifying maybe what is some pre-work, some things we need to bring into those meetings. So that's a very practical way about how you do your listening to you. So those 60, 90-minute sessions, scheduling them in the diary, bringing the relevant members of your leadership team, of your functional areas into those sessions. So that's for listening to you. Chris, where I find there's a bit more challenge and a bit more, oh, what do I do? It's more of the listening to the market and listening to the client. It's at those two,
Yeah.
like, where do I go? In terms of listening to the market, I tell all of my clients that the first place, the number one place to go is the industry and professional association of those client groups, those industries that you're currently serving and seeking to serve. So to use a live example, I have a client here I'm working with right now, a 15-person firm, accounting firm here in Western Sydney. Building and construction is one of their key industry sectors. So
Okay.
they are members of some of the industry housing associate, the housing industry associations. There's a couple key, the building association, Master Builders Association. There's two or three key industry associations that my client, they are members of. That is the first place you go to, is your industry and your professional associations, Chris. The reason why is they're a repository. When you are a member, you go onto those websites, you can get access to white papers, webinar recordings. They'll have newsletters you can sign up for. There often could be, quarterly annual events or annual conferences. Just going onto those websites, you can download, often for free, the latest white papers, sign up for the newsletters, listen to those webinar recordings. And from those, you'll get lots of insights in terms of industry trends, developments. Who are your key competitors? Potentially, who are some of your key prospects? Who are some key people that you might want to be meeting and knowing in the market? Because immersing yourself and building connections with key people, the key influencers, the leaders in the industry are very important. You can get
Yeah.
all that information from your industry and professional associations. So that is always the first repository that I tell all of my clients to go to ideally be members of, but at the very least know who are your industry associations so you can go to those websites and you can start getting some of that information. In terms of getting that information, if you don't have internal resources, you might want to consider freelancers. I have another client that uses university interns to do some of that. They bring them in to do some of that research, to go through
Yeah.
some of those white papers, those kinds of things. So your industry and professional associations, your industry and professional association websites, their publications are the first stops in terms of listening to the market. Now, in
Okay.
terms of listening to the clients, it's very much about being old school, Chris. It's about having discussions with your clients. So you want to maybe have a session to plan out to understand who are our key clients. So who are those key clients that have been with us a long time, giving us revenues, are very profitable. You want to be setting some time to be meeting with the decision makers in those firms to have discussions. And those don't have to be very long, could be
Yeah.
30 minutes or so. You can do them in person. You can do them via Zoom. But it's about having structured, documented discussions where you're basically having a discussion to understand where those clients are at now, where they're looking to go. Where are they having key successes? What are their key priorities? What are their key challenges? Getting some feedback with respect to what do they think about what your firm is doing? Where are they going? Where do they need more help? So, just on those basic kind of questions I've just outlined there, asking those questions, documenting them, and sharing them back. So once you've done those discussions with some of your clients, you want to be making sure that you share that information back within the
Yeah.
team. So those are some very practical ways of how you can do the
Yeah.
three types
So
of
I've,
listening.
I've got a follow-up question for you.
Go for it.
Do you have any technology that you're using today or you recommend that helps assist in that process? And I'll give an example of one that came to mind while you were talking. I've talked about this one before, but there's a tool called perplexity.ai. And Perplexity is a great research tool that when you think about Chat GPT and then you think about Google and you're like, man, I used to use Google, but when I would ask it stuff, it just wouldn't give me the output in a way that I wanted it. And so Perplexity, it lists all the sources, it tees it up beautifully for doing research. So maybe you're doing market research, you're searching your competition, you're searching your own firm to see how you show up. I'm just curious if there's any cool tools that you've come across that come to mind.
I'll be honest, I very much have my clients go a bit old school, focusing, going straight to those industry professional association websites,
Yeah.
and I will list them to, look for these things, look,
Yeah.
go through, look for the newsletters, look for the white papers. Are there some key events? So I will list out some specific kinds of things like the white papers, webinars, upcoming events that they may have.
Yeah.
Not just the big conferences, but often there's local, smaller events, roundtable summits, those kinds of things. So I will list those out. And what are the things to be looking for? Because we want that depth of specificity, because
Mm-hmm.
specificity and having that depth of understanding that's very relevant for your industry is quite important. So I'm very big on folks getting quite close, that whole proximity, immersing, being in the market, and going direct. So I don't recommend. So if there are tools, I haven't really recommended those because I really want folks to get quite specific. If you're building
Yeah.
in construction, you are going to those websites and you're looking at those, those particular white papers, the newsletters. So you're knowing who are the industry leaders, what are the key events, getting quite specific and granular, because that relevancy, that expertise is very much what our clients are looking for. And to really demonstrate your relevance and in-depth knowledge of your markets, your clients, is quite key. So I must
Yeah.
confess, I'm very old school that way in trying to get that specificity and granularity. And so
Yeah.
I will direct them. I know they're time poor, but go to these sites, look for these kinds of newsletters, these publications that are very specific and relevant to their industries, their geographic markets, and the kind of clients they're currently working and seeking to serve. So
Yeah.
that's kind of really my approach there.
Okay. All good.
But
There's many
definitely in
ways
terms
to
of,
skin a cat.
yes, yes. Definitely though, in terms of, using tools to kind of record your conversation if you're going to be conducting those client interviews, I'm
Yeah.
all for, recommending that so you can focus on listening to the conversation and capture. So
Yeah.
that's where I tend to say definitely if you've got your preferred tool of how you record and capture Zoom calls or capture
Yeah.
interviews on the phone, definitely I'm very big on using those so you can capture
So
all the
I I
granularity.
I 1000% agree. I think one of the best things that I love about kind of it's newer in the sense of how it can provide summaries for you. We've had transcripts, we've been able to
Mm,
record calls, but there's almost no meeting internally, externally that I go to where I don't ask if I can
mm,
use an automated note taker to not just record the call, but to transcribe it.
yes.
And it's because it allows you to be more present during the
Yeah.
meeting. So if you're doing these interviews, let's say you're doing it on Zoom, you're doing it on Teams, everything has a note taker
Yes.
add-on that you can use. And if you don't have one, get it turned on. It's probably like 19 or $20 a month.
Yeah.
The summaries though that you get are going to be 1,000 times better than
Yes.
anything you'll write down on your own.
Yeah.
And you'll be so thankful when you go back to use that. So I think that's a really good point. Do you have a preference over a meeting note taker that you use?
When I'm doing those kinds of interviews, I tend to. I've got an app on my phone if I'm doing in person, but when I do ones on Zoom, yeah, I just use the built-in
Yeah.
Zoom function.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
it's very important that we record, we get transcribed, that we're recording those discussions because they need to be documented, Chris. Because the magic happens when you go back and you share those insights, those learnings. You want to have debrief meetings with your teams
Yeah.
to go back and share with the leadership team and the relevant functional groups, because you're going to have learnings that are going to impact maybe the kinds of advisory offerings that you're working on, which is a big thing with accounting firms right now.
Yeah.
What are you doing to your advisory offerings, operations, client delivery, sales? It could be training and development if you're going to be developing a new workshop, what have you. So documenting and sharing the learnings across the organization with the leadership team as well as the relevant team members is very critical and important, because that's where the magic happens, because that's where you can start to take action on the actual
Yeah.
feedback that you're getting.
Yeah. Good point. So if we kind of go back to where do you start if you're thinking about go-to-market strategy and growth, and you mentioned listen, and you had the three elements of listening, the three lenses of listening.
Yeah.
What is there a next thing that you would add on to? Okay, listen, then.
So then once you've done that listening, then it's really part of that is that digesting, that analysis to say, okay, what is the so what? What are the implications in terms of so that's where you're doing a bit of a workshopping, a bit of analysis to understand what does this mean in terms of, are there gaps? Where are there gaps in terms of, are there new kinds of services, for example, that our clients are looking for? Are there things that we need to be doing better? So really, you'll start to be working out, where are the opportunities in the market? And then how do we go about sourcing them? So it is about doing that analysis, that distilling to understand what are the opportunities, which might be with current clients. So looking at with your current clients, what does this mean in terms of additional improvements, additional offerings? Then also looking externally to new market opportunities. So where might there be opportunities out there? And then with whom should we be targeting? And then we start to be thinking about how are we going to go out and be reaching those new clients. So it's doing that analysis and then splitting it out from an internal current client portfolio perspective, and then looking externally as well, if that's also your objective of going after new opportunities.
So tell me if I'm getting this right, because I love to think about things in parallel to make them make sense to me. I am a very simple brain person.
Absolutely.
And, so when I want to learn something new, I love learning, even though I'm a simple brain person, I love learning. I still give it a shot on lots of new things. But the process that I found, which I think I call it making myself into like a super learner, is I want to get geeked out on something. And I want to get very immersed in it. And there's this light bulb moment, usually after I do enough immersion in something, where it clicks and it's like, oh my gosh, it's starting to make sense. These things I'm starting to get a feel for what these mean and the relevance and context. And from there, I can take it and I can start doing something with it. I can start distilling down. So you mentioned, getting kind of all that research you've done. Now you want to distill it down and you want to do something with it. So once I do the learning, let's just say, and I'll give an example. So right now, one of the things I am working on is learning how to integrate different AI technology and use an automation platform called make.com.
Okay.
It's something that I have no background in, and I'll go and like literally on a Saturday, I might sit there for 6 hours and just watch YouTube videos, not do anything with it. I will just sit there and watch it till I get it to where it makes sense.
Yeah.
And then from there, I can start building strategies of what do I want to do with this now that I understand it. So if I go back into your world of, I listen to our internal firm. I listen
Yeah.
to the market. I listen to existing clients. And I took all this information in
Yeah.
and I wrestled around with it in my head to distill it down
Yeah.
into these key points. But now I want to take action. Now I want to,
Okay.
where you're going with this, maybe I want to launch a new service that I didn't have before. And, and I've started, because I did all that, I found all this things where I can attach value
Yeah.
and how I can go and create that value and turn it back into go to market. And I'm just curious if that
Okay. So you're very,
aligns with it.
it completely aligns. So once you've done all that internal analysis and you've done that reflecting, that thinking, then I guess we can now start turning to my go-to-market framework, which is what I
Yes.
use,
Okay.
where we start to take action. So the go-to-market framework, this is a framework that I've developed for professional services. So for accounting firms, for likes of accounting firms, law firms, we're providing advisory services, and based on how our clients buy, we can then start to then look at how we're going to actually go to market. So we have that understanding of the industries. We know the markets we're going to go after. We know that the clients, what they're looking for. And I guess I'll reflect on one of my current accounting clients, because I'm actually
Okay.
working with them in this process. So they're wanting to getting into the likes of building and construction, and prop tech as being two sectors. We've done all of this listening, so we've tapped into the industry reports. I've done some client interviews across their client base, and so we've seen now and in alignment with the trend of many accounting firms that they're seeing, clients are wanting more advisory types of services. So this firm, my accounting client, wants to get out there. So now we know that in terms of the clients, of how they buy, of how our professional services buyers buy, they do a lot of independent self-education and research. So that's a very common thing for buyers of accounting services. So they're doing their research, they're going online, they're going to different sources. So providing them with insights, what I call AIR, advice, insights, and recommendations to their key priorities and objectives, is what they're looking for. So the go-to-market framework has three key pillars, Chris. It's about using content, micro events, and strategic collaborations to service both to acquire, retain, and grow your clients. So this is both for your current clients and those clients that you seek to serve, because our clients are looking for that, what I call AIR, advice, insights, and recommendations on their key priorities and objectives. So to use my accounting firm client as an example, so what we're doing right now, so in that content pillar, they are now working on developing content around some of the key trends and some of the key issue areas that are of interest to their key targets around building construction and the prop tech firm. So they're working on some articles. They're working on doing some webinars. So creating the content that their target audience is interested in. So that's creating the content, but then we're also making sure we're getting that content distributed. So that first key pillar of content is around content creation, and in my client's case, it's around doing articles. We'll say really it's around doing articles, which we're going to then also distribute. So not just through their email, their newsletter, and on social media, but they're going to be putting some articles into the Inside Small Business Magazine here in Australia. They're going to be putting it into the the Housing Industry Association and the Master Builders Association. So two of the industry associations, they're going to be getting those publications there. So that's a content pillar. So we want to be making sure we're creating the right content, talking about trends and issues that are of issue to your clients and prospects, creating that content, and then getting that distributed, not just on your website and through your newsletters, which is all SEO, but where are those other channels, those other watering holes, where your clients and prospects go for information. So that's the first pillar, Chris. The second pillar around go-to-market is what I call micro events. So these are events that I call 2 hours or less, where you're bringing together clients, prospects, where they have the opportunity to interact with peers, interact with experts, to ask questions, gain perspectives, because our buyers, again, very much how they do their buying, their research and education is not just looking at content, but they want to be talking to people, be it peers, experts, those trusted sources where they can get, again, getting those advice, insights, recommendations, different perspectives. So hosting micro events. So these are very short events that are things like doing roundtables, Q&A sessions, webinars, these kinds of things where you can be bringing, clients, prospects, people from the industry, bringing folks together so they can do a bit of learning, they can ask questions. And short events are finding to be, my clients are finding to be very effective because everyone's very busy and people don't necessarily have time to go to the 2-day conference and
Yeah.
the 3-day workshop. But people will find time, if there's going to be value there, to dial into a 60-minute mastermind, the 45-minute webinar or the roundtable if there's value there, and doing them online, Chris. I know we're all, we love being back face to face. Online proves to be very effective because people are very busy. So they can dial into, that roundtable session talking about, key trends for 2025 as I'm on my
Yeah.
way to pick up the kids from school, or I'm on my way to my executive MBA and night school course. I can dial it and multitask. So micro events are a great way to really bring folks together because you can leverage the content that you've been putting out there and using that as the platform to facilitate discussions in these masterminds, Q&As, and in your clients and prospects will get a lot of value from that.
Yeah. And that gives you the ability to create more content off of, like when you're doing a
Absolutely.
micro event, it is a gold mine of things to bring back into
Absolutely.
your content.
Yeah, it's things to bring back to your content. It can be fuel for other content, other events, which will give more value to your clients and prospects. And then the third element of your go-to-market strategy is strategic collaboration. So understanding, again, by having done that listening at that client level, knowing where and with whom your clients deem as trusted people and sources for advice, insights, and recommendations. So that can be, that can be the likes of, it could be people like industry and professional associations. It could be folk, peer advisory groups. It could just be general people in those industries, in those markets. Knowing who those people are that you may want to collaborate with to create content, to host an event, to cross promote what you're doing. So having those collaborations are great because those people, those organizations can be great sources to create content, do events, cross promote, but also to gain introduction and to gain insights around the industries and the people that you're looking to serve. So your three key pillars of content, micro events, and strategic collaborations are really the three key pillars around your go-to-market, because these are reflecting how our buyers buy. Because our buyers are looking for that expertise. They're looking for those advice, insights, and recommendations. And they do a lot of self-research and education. And these three pillars are the means by which they do so because it aligns to how our buyers buy. And it's all things that you can start doing right away. You don't have to have the perfect strategy document to be getting ready.
Yeah.
Once you've done some of that listening and you start to know what are some of the key issues and key topics, you can start organizing a Q&A session, a round table. You can maybe putting out some content. You can start tapping into your network. And maybe start going to the industry and professional association. That again is often a key source for collaborating to promote your white paper, to promote your webinar, to maybe do a breakfast, do a webinar with that association. So a lot of this, because your go-to-market it's an ongoing, it's iterative, it's interactive, it's all about execution in an ongoing but very strategic, client-driven, market-driven manner.
Yeah, and in your world where the cool one, it's not the cool thing, but one of the cool things that you get to experience is watching somebody go from here to here, right? It's that growth journey. And we're always in a continuous journey of growth. Like you never get there, right? You're always having something that you want to improve upon. But when you think about, do you have any stories around a firm that you've worked with where they were very much in the comfort zone of, Michael, we market today, like we have a website and we have a newsletter and we have clients and we have client referrals and we've seen growth in our revenue year over year. So and they're saying like, I feel like I'm already doing all the right things. And then you've turned the light bulb on for them. You're like, okay, trust me. That's a good foundation you're on. But let me take you through things like go-to-market frameworks where we introduce the dimension around this, right? Instead of it being a flat strategy, now we're starting to put dimension of strategic relationships and micro events and being very specific with our content. And there's other things that you build in, and they did it. And then you saw this amazing just path of success where they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad we followed this with you, Michael. But I'm just curious, do you have any good stories that you
Yeah,
could
look,
share?
to be honest, Chris, I'd have to say one of the accounting firms I'm working with right now, which is another Australian-based accounting firm, again a similar 20-person firm. I'd have to say they very much fit that. It was the father started the business. The business has been running a long time. His son and his son's best friend from uni have taken over the firm and now running the firm. The firm has
Okay.
been going along. They run a very local level business targeting SMBs. They've been doing well, but these two the co-founders now being in their late 30s, they're like, Michael, we want to take things to the next level. We think there's a lot of potential because they've been listening to a few podcasts, US based here, and hearing what's happening in terms of the opportunity to become more advisory, more strategic.
Mm-hmm.
But they haven't really done a lot. They kind of they would put out the occasional newsletter, a little bit of social media. So I took them, Chris, through that process. We started off by doing exactly what I talked about. So we did listening. So we had a strategic workshop that was back in February, and we brought the whole team together. The entire 20-person firm had a half-day workshop, really understanding where the firm is at, where they're wanting to go, getting agreement and alignment across the team as to this is where the firm was looking to go. And so that was a great strategy session. It was very clear and alignment that we want to be moving in, and we want to be tapping into some new sectors, real estate and professional services being two that they want to kind of
Mm-hmm.
in depth more too. I then proceeded to do interviews for them because they knew that we really don't understand our clients. We think our clients like us, but we do think there might be some rumblings, some needs for us to be able to do more for them. So I did about 15 interviews across their client base in terms of some of their key clients, where they're currently operating in, as well as some of those target sectors that they were looking to get more involved into. Chris got some great learnings from those interviews because definitely while clients are very happy with the firm, a lot of those companies themselves are growth firms and they were looking to grow. And there was like, Michael, the firm is great, but we're looking to do some big things with our real estate firm, our own
Yeah.
law firm. And so, we are going to be needing some more. They seem to be really good around technology and know stuff about strategy and growth, but we're going to need more, more strategic advice, more workshop. We're going to need more sophisticated things as we're moving on our own growth trajectory. So that was a big learning that you're going to need to start providing more because while you're great at the transactional, you seem to be able to do some of this growth stuff. Can they do it, Michael? Because we're moving forward and we don't expect them to be able to do everything, but they need to at least be able to guide us to the specialists who are going to be able to help us as one law firm is looking to go into Asia Pacific, as they're looking to grow in the real estate. They want to go national from just being a Sydney-based. Can they help us with that? So doing that listening at that client level was really, really good. And so now the firm is now very much working through the go-to-market framework where they're doing a number of things, developing some new offerings.
Right.
So that's going to be involving doing some more kind of like strategic workshops. They're going to be doing more community style type of events, having panel events where they're bringing folks together. So they're looking to really establish their own kind of like micro community mastermind group for their clients. So that's something that they're working on, going to be looking to launch. But they're also getting out there now and they're writing, they're doing content. So we've developed a content strategy in terms of the kinds of articles, white papers that they're going to be doing, and also where they're distributing them. And so they're now working with my strategic partner on building out their content strategy for 2025.
Yeah.
In fact, they're having that session actually in a couple hours actually,
Okay.
and they're also going to be
Nice.
doing a couple. They're actually going to be doing a couple events. So here in Australia, October is Small Business Month. So they're going to be doing a webinar and strategy workshop for Small Business Month in October. And then at the end of the year, they're going to have a client event for clients and key prospects, where it's going to be like a executive briefing type of end of year breakfast, where they're going to bring some guest speakers, and they're going to be having bring some clients, some other service providers together. So they're already now actively really, and they've really kind of seen the light of what's feasible, what's possible. And so they're working now through their 3 elements of content and micro events, primarily strategic collaborations. Now they've identified the kinds of associations that they're really needing to start to reach out to. So for 2025, they're going to be looking to do some keynotes at some of the key industry association conferences. So they're going to be putting their applications in for that, which is going to be due next month, to start getting more involved with some of those industry associations. So that's a live example how they've gone from being kind of comfortable, but recognizing there could be some opportunities, and they kind of had an inkling. I think our clients want more. We did the internal listening. We then talked to some clients, identified that there's opportunities to providing more workshops and more advisory services and facilitating that interaction.
Yeah.
And as a result, now they're developing content. They're doing articles and some white papers, and they're going to be doing events in terms of webinars, workshops, and then they've got some key end of year client summit breakfast briefing events. So
Okay.
that's just an example of how they've take it to the next level.
Yeah,
From
that
where
was
at
good.
the beginning of the year, Chris, where they were basically, if you compare now to the beginning of the year, it was we just kind of work with our current clients. They would just occasionally send out a newsletter, maybe quarterly. They do the odd social media. Now we've gone from that to developing a program of putting out content, getting it in front of the right eyeballs. They're now hosting events, and actually getting involved in a leading event of October Small Business Month, which is a statewide event. And then they're doing, and now they're also tapping into other organizations now as well that they're going to be collaborating with, doing keynotes. So they've gone from just email and occasional newsletters to now having a program of activity that they're undertaking. And this is a 20-person firm, with a one person who acts as a quasi office manager, marketing coordinator. So this is not a firm that has lots of big corporate bells and whistles and budgets.
Yeah,
so that's a live example.
No, that is good. Thank you for all that detail and for sharing the specific story there. As we wrap up here, let me try and do a recap of everything I think I've heard from you today. And, the first part I'll start is, if you want to grow, you have to play to win. You have to go on offense. You cannot be passive. You got to go on offense. To go on offense, the first place that you can start is get out there and learn. Do a lot of listening and go grab a lot of information. And that foundation of information is really important, because once you get that, your next thing you need to do is distill it down so that you can start building strategies of, where do I want to go and win? What kind of services do I want to win with? Who in the market do I want to win with? What kind of pricing do I want to win? And you can't do that if you don't go and do the foundational work. Otherwise, you're just going to be developing your own, throwing rocks at the wall and hoping they stick.
Yeah.
Once you get your strategies in place, one of the key things that you recommend on a go-to-market strategy is to make sure you're focusing on your content. The quality of your content. It's not all about just having a website, having a newsletter, and having an email platform. The content that you builds a relationship with those people, and it draws them in, and it gives them value. It's ongoing value.
Yeah.
Then you get into micro events, because let's face it, networking and bringing people together is really key. It's another way to wrap trust and to wrap value around that they don't get on their own. And not everybody's doing that. That's a great differentiator. And then on the last part of that is developing strategic relationships with voices that complement yours or sound like you and help reinforce the message. If you focus on those 3 things, there is no way you're not going to get from here to here on your next wave of growth. Did that capture the essence of what you said?
You captured it beautifully, very succinctly, and you're exactly right. do your listening, gain that upfront understanding, and making sure you're getting it at that client level, and then execute your go-to-market across those key pillars around content, micro events, and strategic collaboration. Always thinking about providing value, always think about providing advice, insights, and recommendations, because that is what our clients and prospects are looking for. And how they buy, they do their research seeking out advice, insights, and recommendations. So use those three pillars, deliver value based on your target clients, what they want, what they're looking for, giving them air on those three, and
Yes.
you will succeed and win, because that is how they buy, that is how what they're looking for. But it all starts with listening to really identifying those opportunities, the opportunities that are right for your firm, based on your capabilities and where your firm is looking to go.
Okay. So if there's just one takeaway that you could just say out of everything we've talked about, here's my one thing that I would say, really think about this, a triggering thought of something to think about. Does anything come to mind?
I would say, if nothing else, you need to be listening. You need to be listening to your clients, listening to the buyers, those that make the decision to buy. You need to understand, if it's nothing else, if you listen to nothing else, make sure you're listening to the buyer and can answer three questions. Who makes the decision to buy? What are their priorities, and how they buy? If you do nothing else, you must have an understanding of that, because that is going to be fundamental in really getting you on your pathway. So yeah, that
Awesome.
listening is the starting point, and listening at that buyer level is very critical.
Love it. Love it. Thank you for everything you've shared today, Michael. I love the takeaway at the end here. Really enjoyed our discussion today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Chris. It was fantastic. Great to be here.
All right. Take care, Michael.
Thank you.